Transformers Rise of the Beasts is set for release on June 9th, 2023, and a ramp up of marketing is supposed to kick in this December. With rumours circulating about more info coming soon, it got me thinking about my biggest concern, and that's the story. My concern is not what we've heard about the story so far, but more how the story came together. For those unsure about the story, here's what we know so far. In the year 1994, a pair of archaeologists from Brooklyn come into an ancient conflict through a globe-trotting adventure that ties in with factions of Transformers, the Autobots, Decepticons, Maximals, Predacons, and Terracons. Now on the surface that sounds like a decent story, but it won't be easy to tell. Transformers Rise of the Beasts needs to explain moving from the 1980s to the 1990s. It needs to explain the introduction of beasts and several robot tribes. It needs to explain an entire new human cast, whilst bringing all these aspects together. Prior to Bumblebee, Transformers movies that required this level of storytelling haven't entirely worked out, most notably 2017's Transformers The Last Knight. The story of the fifth installment of the franchise was overcomplicated and simply didn't work within the timeline. The reason for these issues, or at least in my opinion, is because Transformers The Last Knight wasn't developed using one script, but instead it was two scripts merged together. Several years later, 2023's Transformers Rise of the Beasts may have been developed under the same circumstance. In January 2020, Deadline reported two scripts were being worked on for two different Transformers films. The article said, Transformers the IP that never dies, based on the 1980s toy franchise with the slogan "More Than Meets the Eye," is being developed again at Paramount with two projects, one by murder mystery scribe James Vanderbilt and the other by John Wick Chapter 3 and Army of the Dead scribe Joby Harold. The Vanderbilt project, from what I've heard, is based on Transformers spin-off Beast Wars, which are robots that transform into robotic animals like Cheetor, a cheetah, Optimus Primal, a gorilla, Rhinox, a rhinoceros, and more. Vanderbilt has been on the project since April. There's news today that one project is based in the Bumblebee universe. These details from Deadline were the first bits of info of Transformers 7 being developed, and it seemed James Vanderbilt was working towards a script introducing Beast Wars, whilst Joby Harold was working towards a Bumblebee sequel. In November 2020, Stephen Caple Jr. was hired to direct Harold's script, the Bumblebee sequel, but in February it was revealed that the film was going under the working title of Transformers Beast Alliance. James Vanderbilt's project then began to fade away, with him confirming that the studio had opted for Harold's script. But did Vanderbilt's script entirely fade away, or was it brought together with Joby Harold's script to create the working title that we now know as Transformers Rise of the Beasts? In April 2021, Anthony Ramos was cast for the lead role in the film. Later that month, Dominic Fishback was cast opposite Ramos. It was also revealed that Darnell Matea and Josh Peters had been hired to rewrite Harold's screenplay. Joby Harold, Darnell Matea, Josh Peters, along with Eric and John Hobart received screenplay credit, with Harold solely receiving story credit, while Ken Nolan, Tony Retamea, Jewel Taylor and James Vanderbilt received additional credit off-screen. Ken Nolan was the scriptwriter behind Transformers Night, set during the Dark Ages, a mashup of fictional stories of Arthurian legend, English history and transforming beings. His story was merged with Transformers Operation Skyfire, a coming-of-age story set in World War II. If you haven't twigged it yet, this was the story of Transformers The Last Knight. So now we have Nolan's input in Transformers Rise of the Beasts, along with James Vanderbilt and several others' material under Joby Harold's Bumblebee sequel script. My concern is that Transformers Rise of the Beasts has gone through the same development cycle as Transformers The Last Knight. Not one script, but two merged together, and even more scriptwriters having additional input. Of course, the story may have needed this cycle to get it in good shape, but history has told us that's usually not the case. I've already given you an example within the franchise where this cycle has failed. What's interesting is arguably the best Transformers script still came from the Transformers Last Knight writers' room, but it was passed over. That script came back on the table in 2017 and only had one writer's input. That script was written by Christina Hodson, and of course, it was 2018's Bumblebee. So to sum up my big concern, it seems Transformers Rise of the Beasts may not be one writer's vision, but a ton of writers who have pulled this script together. As Transformers fans, we've seen this happen before, and the story has ended up being a disaster. An example most recently outside the Transformers franchise is Black Adam. This movie is fun, I'll give it that, and the end credits scene is great, but the story isn't very good, and the history behind that script is very similar to what we've experienced with Transformers. But what are your thoughts? Are you concerned about the development process and how the script came together? Is the story something that's important to you? For me, personally, it's the most important part, and even more so when trying to set up further installments within a franchise, which Transformers Rise of the Beasts will be attempting to do. Make sure to leave me a comment. If you enjoyed this type of content, why not drop a like on the video, and until the next one, thanks for watching.